Okay, let us start exercise 8.1. I'll discuss few questions from exercise 8.1 of the book Calculus and Analytic Geometry, 9th edition. So, first of all, I'll discuss question number 18 that says find the nth term of the sequence -3, -2, -1, 0, 1 and so on. Now you can check that these are integers which are starting from -3. So we know that there is a shift of -3, so we can write it as an is equal to n minus 4. In other words, it's an AP with first term -1 and common difference is 1, so it becomes n minus 4. Similarly, we can do question number 20 where we need to find out the nth term of this sequence. Now clearly there is a difference of 4 in each term, so we know that an is 4n minus 2. So we clearly know that by this rule a1 will become 2, a2 will become 6 and so on. A plus n minus 1 into d, and a is given to us, that is 2, n minus 1, and the common difference is 4, so it becomes 4n minus 4 plus 2, so that becomes 4n minus 2. Now let's say question number 39. So we need to check that whether the sequence this is convergent or divergent. Now if you see that there are two possibilities, we can write it as now if n is even, the expression star will converge to 2. Why? Because this expression for n is equal to even will become 2 and this expression will become 0 as we take n tends to the infinity, 1. So this expression will become 1. So 2 into 1, it will go to 2, right? And if we take n to be odd, now if n is odd, then star will converge to 0. So there are two different subsequences which are converging to two different limits, so that's why an will have to be divergent. So therefore an is divergent. Question number 40. Given that the first term of a sequence is x1, which is cos 1, and next terms are x2 is equal to x1 or cos 2, whichever is larger. Similarly, we'll take x3 as x2 or cos 3, whichever is larger. So that means we'll keep on constructing the sequence with the fact that xn plus 1 is equal to maximum of xn and cos n plus 1. So we'll take the previous term and we'll take the cos of n plus 1, that means cos of the next term. So we'll choose the maximum out of these two and that becomes our next term of the sequence. So we want to show that, we want to check that whether this is convergent or this is divergent. This is easy to check. Now you know that every time you are taking the cos of a number, every time you are taking a cos of the number, and every time you are taking the maximum out of these two, that means your sequence is actually increasing, right? So therefore the given sequence is non-decreasing, right? And it is bounded above by which value? By 1. Why? Because cos cannot take the value more than 1. So every time you pick xn plus 1, you take the increased value. Why? Because you take the maximum of these two numbers. That's why. So your xn plus 1 will be always bigger than or equal to xn. So hence the sequence is non-decreasing, as I've told. And secondly, each of this term is actually constituted by the cos function. So it cannot take a value which is more than 1. So the sequence is non-decreasing and it is bounded above by 1. So therefore sequence is convergent. Next is question number 48, and it says that show that if m1 and m2 are the least upper bounds for the sequence an, then m1 must be equal to m2. That means one sequence cannot have two different least upper bounds. One sequence cannot have two different least upper bounds. That's what we want to show. So actually this will be proved in 3-4 steps. It's pretty much easy. So let's say how we prove it. So let's say we prove it on the next page. So now m1 is a least upper bound of an. So m1 is less than or equal to every bound of an. So in particular m1 will be less than or equal to m2. Why? Because m1 is least upper bound So it has to be less than or equal to every other bound of the sequence. But same applies to M2 as well. But M2 is also a least upper bound of An. So therefore M2 is also less than equal to M1, right? Sorry, here M1, mistake was there. So both are least upper bounds, so that means both are less than equal to each other, which cannot happen until we say M1 has to be equal to M2. So from these two, from 1 and 2, we'll say that M1 is equal to M2. Okay, so let us start with question number 50, which says that prove that if a sequence An which is convergent, then to every positive number epsilon, however small, there exists a positive integer n such that whenever m and n greater than n, that implies the difference between mth and nth term can be made less than epsilon. So that's what we want to prove. So let's see how it works. So let us see the solution of this, that how it works. Now, given that limit n tends to infinity, An is L, that means for every epsilon positive, however small, the difference of An and L can be made less than epsilon by 2. If it can be made less than epsilon, then it can be made less than epsilon by 2 as well. So similarly for mth also, I can write it in this way, right? So small error, I should write it n over here, it's m greater than n. This can be done, right? Now consider the difference of am and an. So now we can add and subtract L over here, and this can further be written as am minus L plus an minus L, which we know that less than epsilon by 2 plus epsilon by 2. So this is equal to epsilon for all m and n greater than n. So that's what we want to prove. So now we must understand the underlying meaning of this. So basically this actually means that the tail of the sequence, if you go to the tail of the sequence, then if you pick any two terms after a certain cutoff, and that cutoff is say n, so after certain cutoff the difference between these two terms can be made as small as we want. So let us understand this whole thing with the help of an example. Okay, so let's say you take an example En, which is 1 by n. You know that it converges to 0 as n converges, as n goes to infinity. So now you know that can we do this thing for this? That means am minus n can be made less than epsilon for all m and n greater than n. Can we do this thing? Yes. So starting from the convergence of an, since an is converging to 0, so difference of an and 0 can be made as small as we want. So this can also be made less than epsilon by 2 for all m and n greater than n. So now you see that what you want. Suppose you want that your am and an difference can be made less than epsilon by 1 by 10. So can this be done? So yes, it can be done. If you choose m and n greater than 21, this can be done. But how it works? So you choose from an minus 0 less than epsilon by 2, that means 1 by 20. So can this be made less than 1 by 20? Yes, it can be made. After what? After your m is 21. So the point I want to make is, if you want to make the difference of these two less than 1 by 10, so all you need to choose it what? If you think it as an epsilon, so this is your epsilon by 2. So you always make a cutoff for epsilon by 2, and this will work for the epsilon over here. Why? Because we know that if we make this difference to be less than epsilon by 2, then difference of am and an can be made less than epsilon. Why? Because it is the sum of the differences, sum of epsilon by 2 and epsilon by 2, right? So that's what I want to prove. So you may take another example and you may further prove that this can be this makes sense. After this cutoff, now you may take another examples to show that after this cutoff, this difference is always less than 1 by 10. So that means, for an example, you take this thing. So that would be 1 by 21 minus 1 by 1000. And the difference will come out to be 0.0466, which is again, of course, less than 1 by 10. So after this will always hold. You take any example, right? So what exactly it means? It means that when you actually make a cluster, right? So let's say this is 0 over here, this is 1 over here. Again, pick the terms of the sequence 1 by n. So this is 1. And if you take n is equal to 2, this is half. N is equal to 3, 1 by 3. N is equal to 4, 1 by 4. And so on, the terms will be so much close to 0. Now, if you pick any two terms here, so difference between these two terms can be made as small as we please. Since there is a kind of cluster, so we can expect that the terms near the clusters are very close to each other. And that's what actually we have proved over there. That means after a cutoff, that means under a tail, this difference can be made as small as we please. That means near cluster, any two terms are actually approaching to each other. They are very close to each other. How much close? As close as we want. So of course, this inequality, this condition will be satisfied by infinitely many terms except finitely many terms. And which are those finitely many terms? That are after n. So before n, this inequality may not hold, but after n, this inequality will always hold. Okay, so next is question number 51. So that actually states the uniqueness of the limit. That's what? That is, prove that limits of sequences are unique. That means show that if L1 and L2 are numbers such that an converges to L1 and an converges to L2, then L1 must be equal to L2. So that's very easy. Let's start with this. So now, given that an converges to L1 and an converges to L2, and we need to show that L1 is equal to L2. So on the contrary, let us assume that L1 is not equal to L2. Now, since an is converging to L1, so therefore for every epsilon positive, however small, right? So for any choice of epsilon, there exists n1, a defender, such that difference of En and L1 can be made less than epsilon for all the terms after n1. Now this same thing will hold for L2 as well, right? So I'll pick the same thing. So I'll paste it over here. The only difference would be what? Since we are doing this for L2, so we must have some different defender, right? So for L2, let's say there is a defender N2. Now if we want that these two should hold simultaneously, so we generally take what? Choose maximum of N1 and N2 and name it as M. So therefore En minus L1 is less than epsilon for all n greater than M, and En minus L2 is also less than epsilon for all n greater than M. Now this will hold for every epsilon. Now we'll find such an epsilon such that this whole thing will not make any sense. We'll choose that epsilon very sensibly, and that epsilon is L1 minus L2 by 2. So take the absolute difference of L1 and L2 and divide it by 2. Now you consider this difference, that means L1 minus L2. Now can you write it as En minus L1 minus En minus L2, right? And this by triangle inequality will be less than if we distribute the modulus over these two terms. Now since this is given that this and this are here, they are less than epsilon for all n greater than M, so we can write it as that this is less than epsilon plus epsilon for all n greater than M. So this means this is equal to 2 epsilon, but we have selected epsilon to be L1 minus L2 modulus by 2, which is L1 minus L2. Now this is something which is wrong. Why? Because we started from L1 minus L2 and we get a strict inequality over there. So finally the whole thing means that L1 minus L2 absolute difference is less than L1 minus L2 absolute difference, which is contradiction. So our supposition is wrong. So L1 must be equal to L2. Now let us start with the question number 54. What does it say? It says that prove that if a sequence En is convergent to 0 if and only if the sequence of absolute values mod En also converges to 0. That is pretty much easy to prove. We can prove it in few steps, right? So let me prove this for you. Assume that En is converging to 0, right? So all we need to prove that what? Mod En is also converging to 0. So that is something which we need to prove, and that is given. Okay, so if it is given, so by definition, if an converges to 0, then for every epsilon positive, however small, there exists m, let's say capital M belongs to n such that an and 0 का difference can be made the less than smaller, can be made less than epsilon for all n greater than equal to m, or maybe strictly greater than m, doesn't matter. Okay, so this is true, right? So this can be written in a way that an ka mod. Now if it is a modulus, that means it is a positive quantity. So if we keep on, if we take the modulus again, even then it will make no difference. So we can also write it as mod is already there, so we put the mod again. So we can also write it as -0, because this will also does not make any difference. So now in place of an we have mod an now, and in place of L we have 0, and we have same challenge and same defender. So that means this sequence is converging to the 0. So that means mod an is convergent to 0. And since this is an if and only if part, so we need to prove it on other side as well. So this is also the other side, the reverse steps will show that the other side is also true. So let's say given mod an is convergent to 0, to prove an is convergent to 0. So if your mod an is convergent to 0, again for every epsilon positive, however small, there exists m belongs to n such that mod an minus 0 का difference and then take the mod can be made less than epsilon for all n greater than m. Now this can be written as mod n less than epsilon. So it doesn't matter if we take mod 1 time or 2 time, because once a positive number, then we keep on taking the mod, it will make no difference to it. So this can be written in this way. Now this mod an is there, so now this expression can be written as mod an minus 0 less than epsilon for all n greater than m. So now this again, this is the sequence, this is a limit, this is a challenger, this is the defender. So that means an is converging to 0. So that completes our proof. Now this is a special question. This is true only for the case of 0. Otherwise it may not be true if a non-zero number is there, right? So let's say now think of an to be -1. Think an to be -1, 1, -1, 1, -1, 1 and so on. So you know that this sequence is not convergent, as your sequence is, what do you say, an oscillatory sequence oscillating between -1 and 1, and it will not converge anywhere. So but if you take mod of en, that means it will become -1n, so that will simply become 1. That means we have a constant sequence which has 1 is the only term which will keep on repeating. So therefore a mod an is convergent to 1. So in this case, your mod an is convergent. So therefore mod an is convergent, but an itself is not convergent. So in the case of non-zero number, this statement doesn't hold. So the question number 54 only holds when you say that an convergent to 0, then the absolute values mod an also converges to 0. But if you take a non-zero number, then the above scenario may not hold.